Welcome back to Sunday Vibes, one and all. Sadly, we are no longer in the pub, although hopefully that won't last for very long because in London we have been put into Tier 2 lockdown. Thanks very much, COVID. Anyway, let's crack straight on with the show because today I'm joined by Patrick Van Straan and Zach Jalab because Christopher Hamill is on holiday. Now, there's only really one place to start this week. Of the 100-odd questions we had sent in, I'd say 60 of them were about Virgil van Dijk's injury and whether or not it makes Manchester City title favourites. Mazrua Parker here is the main question I've picked. Is Van Dijk's injury fatal to Liverpool's title charge, Jalab?
Maybe not fatal, but it definitely has a big impact on them. I think when they signed him, we saw how big of an impact it had, sorting out that defence for them. You think back to that Champions League final, how fantastic he was. And even last season, he was probably, apart from maybe Kevin De Bruyne, the standout player in the league. He was fantastic on the ball, fantastic defensively. And it's going to be a big miss. Whether or not, it should have been a penalty, it should have been a red card or whatever, that's kind of been discussed. And it's now all about the aftermath. I mean, in his 95 Premier League games with Liverpool, they've conceded 78 times and had 44 clean sheets. So the stats there kind of speak for themselves. When Van Dijk is in the team, there's a 70% win percentage of their games compared to 46% without him. So it's an obvious impact that Liverpool may struggle defensively. Do I think really Jean Matip and Joe Gomez are going to kind of fill that void? Not really. But then, even when people say Liverpool could have gone out and bought this summer, there wasn't really a centre back that would have been able to fill a void that Van Dijk brings to the squad. Maybe Upamecano could have been the closest compatriot, but even he is still not going to fill that void. That's how big of an impact Van Dijk has to that team. And we saw it against Everton, right? I mean, when Calvert-Lewin goes up for that header, look, maybe he wins it, but also I have a better feeling that Van Dijk deals with it better than Joe Gomez does on the day, and so things like that are already starting to happen may worry that Liverpool defence. And even yesterday when I watched them in the Champions League against Ajax, I mean Ajax had quite a few chances to put one away. Yeah. I mean Liverpool kind of came out of the game lucky in the end. The thing is, right, Liverpool have a fantastic squad in general. The midfield, the attack is so good that you think, okay, maybe defensively they might be a little bit poorer. I think they'll be thankful to see kind of Alisson come back as soon as he can, or get back into that starting lineup instantly. And attacking wise, they can still roll over teams. It's now just defensively whether they can kind of deal with people's attacks, which I don't know. I think we will see a Liverpool team concede a lot more. Whether it affects their title charge though, everyone else still seems not great. So I think maybe a Liverpool team without Van Dijk still might win the title, even though they don't have him, just because other teams maybe don't have the necessary level to win the title. Apart from maybe City, I thought Ruben Diaz looks pretty good for them. I bet Liverpool wish they got him now.
Just to bring it back to Van Dijk quickly, I do think that not only is his defending going to be missed on the Liverpool pitch, but I think his leadership is going to be massively missed amongst his Liverpool backline, because I feel like he's the guy who sets the line, he sets the tempo. His distribution from deep is going to be really, really missed. Obviously, it's a key asset for them, isn't it? Van Dijk being able to spray the ball wide to the fullbacks who are quite advanced up the pitch. So I think that's going to be a big, big problem. But what I will say is they've already started the season pretty badly defensively. They've already conceded 13 goals. I think it took them to December last season to concede 13 goals. Obviously, 7 of those did come against Aston Villa. Pat, would you play Fabinho as that CB to cover for Virgil van Dijk's distribution, or would you just go with two classic CBs in Gomez and Matip?
I think that if Thiago's fit, I don't really mind Fabinho dropping out of the midfield. I think if everyone's fit, my first choice midfield for Liverpool would probably be Henderson, Keita, Thiago. So I don't really think it's that big a loss, and he has looked pretty decent in centre-back so far. My bigger concern is the stylistic change. So far this season, they've been kind of playing like Dortmund Klopp, pressing really high, playing a really high line, and teams have been able to get in behind. You saw it with Villa. You even saw
Villa.
it with Arsenal, who were pretty bad against Liverpool in a game where Liverpool were extremely dominant.
And
Leeds.
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 Basically every game.
Leeds were really, playing through the press. Leeds are kind of built to do that, and there are more teams now in the Premier League who can do that. And so it was interesting to me that they made that stylistic choice. Look, we're going to play a higher line. We're going to push up more. We're going to press in the ways we did early in Klopp's tenure. And I think that that's so reliant on the athleticism of the centre backs. Having that recovery pace with Van Dijk is a real safety net for them, because he's one of the few centre backs in the world who can pretty much outpace the majority of attackers. So I think that this might have to prompt a little stylistic rethink, which actually is probably a good idea, because I agree with you. Like, yes, 7 of those goals came against Villa, but they have looked vulnerable. And the way they use their fullbacks, they are always going to be vulnerable, because
Trent hasn't looked good.
But also Trent's role is to pretty much have a free kind of position on the right. Like he's not really there for defensive reasons, and even
That's
Robertson,
what Van Dijk's so good at, right?
Yeah,
like he would cover him all the time.
Yeah, and so would the midfielders, to be fair to them. But Robertson as well, like, needs to get forward. Like, he's often going to be the 5th man in attack, because the midfield is usually quite conservative. If he's still going to be doing that, then you might need to work out a new system, which accounts for the fact that your centre-backs have gone from being superhuman to just, like, fairly good. But that said, I do think that a Fabinho-Gomez centre-back pairing is good enough to beat, I don't know, 15 of the teams in the league.
Fabinho was class against us.
Yeah, the issue is more like if they get another injury, because quite often one injury like is kind of, you can fade it if everybody else around that position is still like first choice players playing at the top of their game. What happens now is if Robertson, for instance, misses 2 games, which doesn't seem like that much, if he's missing as well as Van Dijk, that suddenly becomes a huge gaping hole in Liverpool's defence, right? So I'm interested to see the way that this destabilises the rest of the team, but insofar as it might prompt Klopp to have a think about how his team has played early doors, I'm not sure that it's like the worst thing for him to come up with a new solution for the defence. Because I agree, like last season, I think they got a little bit lucky in defence. I don't think their defence was as good as it ended up looking. This season, I think it's been straight up pretty poor. So yes, I have concerns, but they're not limited to Van Dijk, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting one, because obviously it's so reminiscent. It's almost an identical carbon copy, isn't it, of Laporte last season getting a major knee problem this early in the season. Manchester City obviously couldn't cope with it. They tried to fill gaps, and exactly the same as we're expecting Liverpool to use Fabinho, then they ended up using Fernandinho. So it's really interesting. It mirrors it almost identically. Another problem I just wanted to raise about this Liverpool team, I wanted to get your guys' thoughts on Bobby Firmino at the start of the season, because I've got a few concerns about him. Now, they are playing Sheffield United at 8 o'clock on Saturday. Obviously, we're not shooting this on Saturday night, so we don't know the result of that game. He's probably scored a hat-trick and about to make me look an absolute mug. At the start of the season, his XG, Pat, we're looking at 0.2 per 90, under 2 shots per 90. No goals this season, 1 goal in his last 20 Premier League games. I understand he is incredibly influential to linking up the midfield to the attack without that creative midfielder. Klopp obviously deploys a very workmanlike midfield, and Firmino does a lot of the creativity, allows the wingers to get in behind and play as almost split strikers. But do you think, Pat, that at some stage Firmino needs to start scoring some goals, and a fairly chunky, substantial amount, or should Klopp go into the market for another striker in January/the summer?
I think that next summer I'd be looking to buy a new starting member of that front three anyway. And if Firmino, if you can sell him for big money, I think he'll be 29. It would probably be sensible, but that's not because I think that he's really seriously in decline. I think it's a really small sample so far this season. A bigger issue with Firmino throughout his career is that he's quite a bad finisher. Like last season, I think he got I think he was about 6 goals behind expected goals. Like, he's always finished behind expected goals. And what's great about him as a forward is obviously not really that he's like a clinical striker. Yeah. I guess that I don't mind too much Firmino's underperformance because I think the attack as a unit is still working. I think sometimes you do just have like somebody in there who perhaps is not as lethal in front of goal because they facilitate the players around them. And even in games where they haven't been that impressive, like the Leeds game, the first game of the season against Villa, they still scored plenty of goals. They got 2 against Villa, they got 4 against Leeds. Like they can still score their way out of trouble. And so I would only really worry about Firmino if it suddenly seemed like the attack wasn't working anymore. For now, I think the attack is still working, so I'd probably stick with him because he does so much other stuff that this is the great thing about Firmino. When he's not scoring, when he's not assisting, you're still getting something out of him. And so I don't worry too much about it. But I'd say, like, let's see where we are after 10 games. And if after 10 games these numbers are pretty stable, then I would start to be concerned. And then if I were Liverpool, I'd start seriously scouting for a striker next summer.
Yeah, because obviously Mo Salah and Sadio Mane have literally gone off like a rocket as well, which absolutely helps, doesn't it? So for me, I'm going to say that Liverpool are still title favourites, despite Virgil van Dijk's injury. Jalab, you were mentioning Man City earlier before I think I rudely cut you off. You were talking about Ruben Diaz. Are you putting them as now title favourites ahead of Liverpool?
No, I think I still have Liverpool as title favourites, but it's a lot more open now than it was, say, last week before the Everton game. I think the way the Premier League started, and maybe it is due to the still no fans being in the stadium, and like it was when the restart happened. Every game is crazy. Like the fact that we saw a 0-0. Was it between West Brom and Burnley? That's like a surprise nowadays. When beforehand that wasn't that much of a surprise. But yeah, no, City now look better. Ruben Diaz. I was talking to Kieran, obviously, who's watched City quite thoroughly, and he's thoroughly impressed with him. And just because he's come from the Portuguese league, I think sometimes we do jump the gun and think, oh, he's going to be awful. But I mean, we've the past two from Bruno Fernandes, fantastic. Ruben Diaz now, he looks he looks really good. And so, yeah, I don't think that City are now favourites. I just think it's going to be a lot closer. And I also think a few other teams could also come in there. United, Chelsea, who knows, even Everton, which you can get onto in a bit. But City, like, you can't really ever rule them out. The fact that they've got Kevin De Bruyne, who looks again like he could easily be the player of the year. Sterling on one wing. I mean, I don't even think we've really even seen that Ferran Torres kid. But those guys, like Leicester Shaw was a bit more of a blip, but they didn't have Ruben Diaz at that point. And so I think what we might see this year is the games that really, really do make the difference are going to be the top 6 games when they're playing against each other. So like this weekend when we have the Chelsea and United, when Liverpool face Manchester City, those games where essentially it's a 6-pointer could really swing the title in their favour. I'm not too sure when those dates are, but I think those games, especially now, City must have so much confidence now going to Anfield, or when Liverpool come to them at the Etihad and know that there's not going to be a Virgil van Dijk at the back, and so they're going to have to use Joel Matip and Joe Gomez to mark the City front line, which obviously is going to be a hindrance for Liverpool. So. Although I still think Liverpool are going to just edge it out, it's going to be a lot closer.
I think Man City have big injury problems themselves. I think this season is going to be a real test of Pep's managerial ability, because obviously we've already seen Aguero with significant injury problems, and to be honest with you, we've seen that building for the last few years, and I don't think it should come as a shock to any Manchester City staff member that Sergio Aguero is not going to be able to play a full campaign. Sadly, Gabriel Jesus has also picked up injuries at a similar sort of time, so they're struggling for strikers. Laporte's still injured. Kevin De Bruyne is injured at the moment too. And last night in the Champions League, Fernandinho was taken off with what seems like a muscle injury. We haven't had that confirmed yet. But if we're missing Fernandinho, Kevin De Bruyne, Laporte, potentially Aguero, Pep is in for a challenge as well, isn't he?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, he's already doing some like weird Pep shit this season. Like in the Arsenal game, there was this really weird formation thing, where people were just like, yeah, it was like Bielsa, and it was like, Bernardo Silva was like dropping into the 6, and like Nathan Ake was running up the wing, and it like they were playing 2 right backs, both on the right. I was like, and to be honest with you, especially in the early stages of that game, I was like, a better team than Arsenal would have punished this City side. Like, there were 2 or 3 times early doors where Aubameyang got the ball in midfield and Willian should have made a run, but he didn't because he's shit. And it was just like, if that were a better side, if that were a team with, even if the roles were reversed, like, that would be more dangerous. But certainly better sides will take advantage of those opportunities. And even in the Champions League, I watched a little bit of them against Porto last night, and I was like, I get that people are saying maybe Ruben Diaz is good, but the defense isn't. Like, I thought that they looked pretty like wobbly in defense. Like, Porto shouldn't be waltzing through them. It's Porto at home in the Champions League. Come on. On the other hand, I do think that like some of their players will start to come back into form as some of the vital ones come back from injury. So, for instance, Raheem Sterling's had a pretty weak start to the season. He's got 2 goals and an assist, which is good, but his expected goals are way down. It's at like 0.4, which is half of where it was last season. I think that will rebound when they have an actual target man to play around. I think Riyad Mahrez has been very good. But again, I think he'll be helped when he doesn't have to maybe step up into the front line. You know, guys like Phil Foden, Riyad Mahrez, Raheem Sterling, they want to be buzzing around a central kind of reference point rather than being that reference point themselves. And so I do think that there's scope for them to improve. And also, Pep is trying to do weird stuff with this defence. If they can get through this period where they're learning it, without the results being too bad, then they'll have learnt it, and then the results will probably pick up because they'll play it better. But right now, any team going up against City, I think you just have to go for it. Like, I think they look really poor. I think they should have lost against Leeds. I think they lost deservedly against Leicester, though I do think, you know, conceding 3 penalties in a game is a little bit unlucky. Arsenal, yeah, they were the better side, but I think they were fortunate that Arsenal were not very good. You know, I have serious concerns about Man City. The path for me, for Liverpool to be title winners, the path is quite straightforward, I think. For City to be title winners, I think requires some imagination. And I'm a bit concerned about them.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting one because I definitely think the title winning points tally is not going to be in the 90s this year. We're going to see a significant drop, I think, down to sort of mid to high 80s. I would imagine, which definitely leaves the door open for somebody to come up from behind and still a little bit of a march on both Manchester City and Liverpool. Don't get me wrong, I still think they're the outstanding teams in the league. But, you know, I've seen people talking about the likes of Tottenham contending for the league when they were 3-0 up against West Ham. Every Spurs fan I know is talking about how the league is afraid of them. Do we actually think that Tottenham are title contenders given this Van Dijk injury, the number of injuries that Pep's got at Man City and the defence, Jalab?
I think title contenders is maybe a little bit too kind. I think they should have put the West Ham game to bed. Like, that's the thing. If you're going to be title winners, you can't be conceding 3 goals in 10 minutes. You know, you can't really be missing that chance that Gareth Bale did. You know, you need to be able to kill off games. But then also being 3-0 up in the 80th minute, you probably consider that killing off a game. West Ham that did well in that last 10 minutes, and that strike from Lanzini is outrageous. The Spurs squad is a really interesting one because they are kind of in a position now where they're over their kind of pre-season bit. They're kind of now into full flow, into full form. I think that was kind of although people said that, you know, when Arsenal won the FA Cup, it knocked Spurs into the qualification bit. Maybe that was a good thing because they played 3 games extra than everyone else to kind of get to know the squad, get back to full fitness. And I think we kind of saw that most recently against United. But then since the international break, it's kind of level playing field now. I think attacking wise, they're great. Harry Kane looks fantastic again. Like,
best player in the league, mate. He's the best player in the league right now, Harry Kane.
Passing, shooting, like you name it, he's fantastic at the moment. It's the kind of although like COVID has been terrible, the one thing that Harry Kane can take from it is he got a break. He got a break and was able to. Because beforehand he looked tired. He looked like he wasn't making those runs that he kind of made during his fantastic first couple of years at Spurs. Those injuries that he picked up really looked like they'd had an effect on him. But now he looks like he's been reborn again. He's going, he's moving much better than he was previously, and just the runs when he's carrying the ball forward, when he's making the runs for other people, and his passing ability at the moment is ridiculous.
Mate, that's the
some
thing
of the
for me.
balls he's picking out are mad.
He's suddenly developed. I know he's always actually been able to do it, and Tottenham fans will be saying in the comments, I've always seen Harry Kane do it, but he's definitely improved at it. Is to drop into that half space and they allow Son to progress past him. And suddenly he looks like Kevin De Bruyne in there. His passing is that good, genuinely. Like, I'm looking at some of his numbers now. He's over 5 shots per 90. He's over 2.5 key passes. He's at 1.6 expected goals and assists per 90. 12 goal involvements in 5 games. Obviously, that's fairly unsustainable. But Pat, he is back to his best, isn't he?
It looks that way. Again, like, this is something that we talked about for years, right? We said Harry Kane needs a good rest just to see if he can actually come back to his best physically. And it's a little bit early to call it again because Spurs had quite an easy opening to the season, and they obviously as well in their I think their toughest game, they haven't played any big side except for United, I don't think. In their toughest game, they got an early red card for the other side, so that does help. But yeah, I mean, their fortunes this season are going to be down to Kane and Son. I mean, it's odd to me, though, I think that all the praise has focused on Kane. Like, he has been excellent, but I do think that Son's movement makes it easier to find him. Like, Son is so fast, so strong, and so intelligent that you can just, like, play a simple pass through the middle and Son will beat a defender and score. Like that goal against Man United, the first one, for example. 7 goals in 5 games is just absolutely unreal, and it looks like they're going to nail him down to a long-term contract as well. I'm actually quite bullish on Spurs. I think Spurs at the moment I'd put them in the top 4. If you made me bet on the top 4 for the end of the season, Spurs would definitely be in it. The squad is really deep. They haven't had Bale come in yet, and even if he's just decent, I still think he'll be better than Lucas, Lamela, potentially Bergwijn. There's depth all over the place. The midfield is lethal. Dele Alli's not getting on the pitch. There's just so much talent there that unless they get a significant injury, you do sort of think, yeah, this team is kind of solid all the way through. I still think that Mourinho being too conservative would bite them. If they got into an actual title race, I don't see Mourinho going and playing for a win away at Anfield, playing for a win away at the Etihad, like even doing it away at Stamford Bridge probably. So I think that will probably prevent them from truly contending. But third is definitely up for grabs right now.
Yeah, I think Everton are potentially a contender in there. Chelsea as well. Obviously, it's Chelsea United as a late kickoff on Saturday as well. I don't think we should go into that, Chalav, because I think we're both a little bit too nervous to speak about it. And people will be saying Aston Villa in the comments as well.
Oh,
but,
come on. Let's just get on with it. Whatever.
Put some respect on their name. Yeah, I have to say, though, Everton...
They have been good.
Everton continue to impress me as well. Even in that draw against Liverpool, I was still very impressed with a number of the players, particularly Doucouré and James Rodriguez. I thought were really, really solid. And Dominic Calvert-Lewin, I don't know where he's added this extra 2 foot of leapage from, but he's so good in the air. They've just got to hang balls up to him. And if Richarlison could actually start scoring some goals and taking some bloody chances, because at the moment he needs 30 chances to hit the net, and just keep his head. Obviously, he's banned now for 3 games after that horrific tackle on Thiago. But nevertheless, if he can start chipping in with some goals, I genuinely think Everton are fairly strong title contenders. Is there anyone else we're missing in here? What about Arsenal? Pat, any outside shouts for the Gooners making a title run?
No. I think Arsenal. I think Arsenal will be lucky to get 4th. Arsenal are a Europa League side right now. Like, I mean, if Partey comes in and he's great and they can go to a 4-2-3-1 or a 4-3-3, then I think that they'll improve. But for Arsenal right now, improving means being one of the clearly superior sides in the league, by which I mean one of the 6 or so best sides in the league. Right now, they're playing like probably the 8th or 9th best side in the league. So there are like 2 or 3 levels of improvement Arsenal need to go through to get anywhere near the level of these sides, even Everton. But on the other hand, they've got a lot of excellent youngsters, and if if say like Martinelli comes back after Christmas and looks as good as he did before, and Saka continues to improve at the rate he is currently, then I think there's definitely like reason to be optimistic. But optimistic for me is like maybe we're in the hunt for fourth, as opposed to maybe we sneak a title like it was in say 2015.
All right, so after the Van Dijk injury, then let's just wrap up before we move on to quickfire questions with, has it changed our mind? I still think Liverpool are going to win the league. Jalab?
Yeah, Liverpool. We're not going to mention Chelsea United then.
If you want, but I mean, we'd be mentioning it as if it hasn't happened yet, because we don't know what's gone on, and people will have seen it at home.
Well,
so it's just a recipe for making ourselves look like tits.
Less so the game though, but more in general. I would have thought. Like if we're talking about Everton, we should probably definitely talk about Chelsea and United. And I think Chelsea attacking wise look fantastic. We may have got a draw against Sevilla in the Champions, a 0-0 draw. Frank Lampard's first ever one at Chelsea against Sevilla, but in an attacking sense, I think we look really good. Timo Werner up top as the solo guy kind of looks like that's where he needs to be played. Though him on the left wing is actually too bad when Tammy's playing there as well. That also looks pretty good, as we saw against Crystal Palace. But to get the best out of Werner, I think he needs to be the guy up top at least as a 1 or maybe a 2. And then Christian Pulisic looks fantastic. So in an attacking sense, we look great, but it's the defensive end where the worry comes. So against Sevilla, actually, we did look good, and there's a kind of a correlation here. The 2 games that Thiago Silva and Mendy both played, we didn't concede. In the league and in the Champions League against Sevilla and Crystal Palace. Thiago Silva looks really good. The one blip he made against West Brom has been the only error he's done so far. He looks fantastic on the ball when defending. The issue of Chelsea's season so far has been individual errors. Every goal, basically, that I can think of has come from someone making an individual error. Maybe bar like 2. The third for Southampton and Liverpool.
That is so kind. That is so kind to Lampard.
Pat,
that is nuts.
I'm sorry.
Defense has been atrocious.
No,
atrocious.
Pat,
think about that set piece goal against West Brom. I'm sorry, that's not an individual error. That is bad management.
God, it is though, because when
it's
you
still
look
bad
at
management.
Marcus Alonso leaving his man, like that just can't happen. Like
there's a guy onside in like 6 yards of space. I'm sorry, but like if he's onside by a yard, that's an individual error. If he's onside by 6 yards, that's a coaching error.
But that's what I mean though, is that Marcus Alonso, that's his guy, and he just leaves him. He knows he can't leave him. That's his error. Marcus Alonso again against West Brom, like Thiago Silva. Again, half it's also Kepa as well. Like
I agree. There's been some individual errors, but there have also been some disastrous bits of defending structurally.
And putting defenders in positions where they can make such costly errors is part of management. So, for instance, last season, David Luiz made so many errors, and you have to blame him for them. But you've also got to say, what is a manager doing when they're putting a player like David Luiz constantly in loads of space that he has to defend when he's rubbish at it? Like that is definitely a coaching fault. And I don't know. To me at this point, I'm just because the individual error is like letting Frank Lampard be manager of Chelsea.
No, come on, Pat.
Because listen, all right, the individual erers.
Get in, Potter.
Think about when we played Southampton. Okay, the individual error from Kai Havertz to try and take the ball forward.
I agree, but that's an error 30 yards from goal, and then one pass splits your whole defence.
And attackers lose the ball. That is what they do. Attackers lose the ball all the time.
Sure, and I think maybe that's why I think sometimes having Jorginho and Kante as the 2 there isn't necessarily the strongest at that point, because when things like that happen, they're not in their best element. But
again, a
even
coaching
for
decision.
Half the goals I think come down to Kepa. Like the one against Brighton, like any normal keeper saves it. The one against look at the one like the Southampton one. Like, come on, like a manager can't. What more can a manager do than put a goalkeeper there, and all they have to do is clear the ball?
But even the goal against Brighton doesn't matter. It's a game you won that you should have lost.
Sure.
That goal worries me less than the fact that you gave up chance after chance after chance after chance, which isn't because of Kepa. It's because your defence was awful. Reece James was awful positionally in that game. Like, that is a game where you gave up. Didn't you give up like 18 shots to Brighton? That's nuts.
First game of the season, and we'd had no pre-season, is what I'd say. But then this is what I mean: is we've also not had a consistent back four. Like, the back four that I would say would play week in, week out is Ben Chilwell, Kurt Zuma, and Thiago Silva and Reece James. And they've only played that once, and that was against Sevilla. That was the only time that's played so far. Apart from that, it keeps changing. Aspie keeps coming in. Thiago Silva dropped out for Southampton.
You have to admit you'll do well to get Thiago Silva starting over 30 games this season. You must have been aware of that when you signed a 36-year-old.
How is the mixing and matching not Frank's fault?
Sorry?
How is the mixing and matching not Frank's fault?
No. To that point, yeah, that's where I go. Okay, like a bit of blame has to be there.
Just play Kovacic.
Mate, I that is something I do agree on. But in terms of Chelsea, I think that's where it kind of falls and lies is defensively. And if that can improve, like hopefully it will do over the next kind of few months, then sure, I think there's a better chance than we probably would have had come the beginning of the season. But yeah, that's the one thing, because attacking wise we do look really good. And Hakim Ziyech has now, he's now back to full fitness. Hopefully a couple more minutes under his belt will really get the best back out of him. And then it's just like then it's up to Lampard to kind of pick the right squad and make sure players are getting rested as well. Like, I really want to see Callum Hudson-Odoi also get his chance as well this season. And so that's kind of the view for Chelsea. I mean, on a United angle, you're probably best to take that one.
Hang on. Before we finish Chelsea, can I just ask?
Go on.
Can I just ask, like, if Pete Cech plays a single minute for you in the league this season, you won't finish in the top four. Like, Pete Cech will concede 16 goals in a game.
Mate, he's younger than Caballero.
Oh my God.
He's still been playing goalkeeper in hockey for the past 2 years.
How have you spent like £250 million this summer, and your third choice keeper is Pete Cech, who'd probably be wearing a suit in goal?
He's fourth choice. I think it's literally down to like the way it's explained to me is that it's due to like COVID restrictions or whatever. Just in case, say the worst of the worst happens, because what he's doing is training away from the squad. And so, obviously the goalkeeper train together.
He's not training.
He
works in an office. That's not training.
So he trains at the moment, and he
sits on a Swiss ball at his desk.
It's basically like, say someone in the goalkeeping squad gets it, that might take all of them out, and so we've got one in case if needed. It's literally like an emergency. Well, it's ridiculous. All right, wait until something happens to someone's goalkeeping squad.
Just play Tammy Abraham there. He's massive. He'll probably be fine.
He is 6'5". Yeah, fair play.
Yeah, Man United, absolutely no chance. No chance for the league, so let's just move on from there. Let's do some quick fire questions then. The first one was sent in by Surya Kumar Apu, who says, what are the pros and cons of the European Premier League? I'll jump in a little bit on this one, because obviously I've done a video on the European Premier League already this week. Obviously, there aren't too many pros. I'll be totally honest with you. The cons are obvious. It would mean the end of the Champions League. It would mean an extra 34 games being added to each season, because it would be running alongside the Premier League and domestic football. So it wouldn't replace the Premier League. It would basically replace the Champions League, and that's probably why you saw a lot of the big teams wanting Project Big Picture to go through, so that the league size would be reduced to 18 and the cups would be axed, meaning they'd have more fixtures in the schedule to play in this European Premier League style round-robin league. Not only do you have the league, you also have a playoff system for winners at the end of it, which would basically be a mini knockout tournament. The biggest cons remain that it would just further the gap in terms of money disparity between the elite and your average club. The money we're talking about for winning the European Premier League is like 3 to 4 times more than you get for winning the Champions League. And the same goes all the way down through the 18 teams. Another con, I would say, is that the 12 founding father teams, the rumours are they won't be able to be relegated for 20 years, which is a not particularly fun way of looking at things, is it? I mean, let's say Manchester United are in there, can't get relegated for 20 years, but continue to be this sort of mediocre 8th to 4th in the Premier League side. It's not great, is it? Let alone how they judge the 6 guest teams who are bought into the league each year. I don't really know. That hasn't been laid out yet. Aren't too many pros. I suppose if you wanted one, you would get to see really high-profile games nearly on a weekly basis. But we already see that with the Champions League and the Premier League. So for me, I don't want it to happen. I'm sure the average fan doesn't want it to happen. And it feels like nobody other than the truly elite want it to happen, right, Jalab?
Yeah, I think you're right. If, like from a distance, it's like, oh, cool. You get to see Chelsea take on Real Madrid, United take on Bayern Munich every single week, and that seems quite cool. But and as a top 6 fan, but I think it financially and it's the way it would just kind of screw over everyone else isn't good. It would really make a big divide between the two. And I kind of like getting rid of the Champions League and things like this. It's a bit mental. Like it's been a thing for so long. Even maybe apart from a name change, it's been a thing for so long. And I don't know why everyone keeps wanting to change football at the moment. I think football is really good how it is. Like things like VAR and things like that are different, but the fundamentals of football right now, just everyone's wanting to change them all the time. And I'm just kind of like sitting there like, it's alright as it is. Like, it doesn't need to be changed this dramatically. I don't know. If it ended up being, say, like a thing where it was like a pre-season tournament or something like that, I could maybe jump on board a little bit more. But at the moment, it's a big no from me.
All right, Pat, any thoughts on it, or should we go on to the next one?
No, I feel like Zach's nailed it.
All right, let's do this one then from Josh1127_. Are Man United a better team without Paul Pogba, Pat?
Oh, God.
To be honest, I haven't watched that much Man United because I have my own terrible team to watch. I think as currently constituted, yes. Like, I mean, the way that Pogba plays for United these days, yes. Like, he doesn't really deserve to play, and I'm a huge defender of Paul Pogba. But a motivated Paul Pogba playing somewhere towards the peak of his abilities, of course he should be starting for them. He should be starting for pretty much any side in the world. But I'm just not sure that Pogba exists under this United administration. I'm not blaming Ole Gunnar Solskjaer there really, but it just seems clear to me that the relationship between Pogba and the club is kind of dead. And he's not going to be motivated to play near his best. And they're also not really interested in kind of making a team which does get the best out of him. You need a really solid defensive midfield presence, I think, to play Pogba, and you're not going to. You're not going to have that, like, in this United side. They're going to roll with Fred and Matic and McTominay at the base of midfield. And kind of understandably as well, like, you're not going to drop Bruno Fernandes so you can play Pogba. And a midfield that features Pogba and Fernandes, I think, is quite unstable. It seemed to me like maybe this summer there was an opportunity for United to go and try and use him to get the right player for them. Like, I wonder if United could have used Pogba this summer as a make-weight in a deal for... like, you look at Bentancur not starting every game for Juventus, and you wonder if maybe there was a Bentancur plus cash for Pogba thing that could have been worked out. Like maybe that's not the case, but it feels like he is an asset that United should be using. That doesn't necessarily mean they have to use him on the pitch. But I actually feel just quite sad about what's happened to Pogba. Like, when he broke through, he was the most exciting young central midfielder in the world, and now he's like your Mesut Ozil, which is really tragic.
I think it'd be a bit harsh to call him our Mesut Ozil. Like, he still has...
Yeah, I mean, like, he's in the squad.
Games.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like... And I also think... at the start of the season, yes, he started the season quite slowly. But let's not also forget that he's come back from international break. Or it might have been pre-international break, actually, with COVID. At the very start of the season, had COVID. He's had to recover from that. He doesn't look particularly fit yet, I don't think, Pogba. But he's certainly getting there. What I thought was quite interesting in the PSG game was I really liked when Ole, about 65, 70 minutes, brought Pogba on for Tejas, went back to the 4 and then played a diamond in midfield with Fred at the base. Then it was like Pogba and McTominay with Bruno in front of him, and then Rashford and Martial as split strikers up front. I thought that worked lovely when Bruno was in that sort of half space. Pogba had a bit more freedom up the left-hand side, and it could just leave Fred and McTominay just to do all the dirty work. So I just wonder whether that sort of 20-minute period there might have just twigged something in in Ollie's mind, because we still don't have that right winger. So I don't think it would be the worst idea to play a 2 up front, split strikers, Martial and Rashford, with Bruno as almost like a false 9, really high up the pitch forward, and then Pogba having the freedom of the left-hand side of the pitch, or the right-hand side of the pitch if we want to. I think as long as he's got 2 defensive midfielders in behind him, he's fine in there. It's when he has to do defensive work and off-the-ball work, and he's doing flicks and tricks around the edge of his own area that he's a problem. Because Pogba, like you said, is undeniably on his day one of the best midfielders in world football. The issue I think for him is going to be when his contract's up at United, he's going to be 30.
Wow.
Do I see a major club coming in for a 30-year-old Pogba to the tune of a big bid? I'm not overly sure I do. I think his options are either he runs his contract down at Manchester United and leaves on a free when he's 30, or he stays and knuckles down and tries to add some new things to his game, because like you said, Pat, Bruno's becoming like undroppable for United. He's like the star player right now. So fingers crossed Pogba can get back to his best, and I really think he can prove some people wrong against Chelsea. Again, I haven't seen the game yet, so fingers crossed. But tends to step up against them. I remember that goal he scored when we were there, Jalab. So he's still, for me, one of our key players.
When is that contract up? When is he 30?
You extended it, didn't you?
Yeah, so 2022.
Okay, well, I mean, I think he'll probably go next summer then.
You think he leaves next summer with 1 year left?
It depends how much Man United ask, but I think that probably, like, if Man United are sensible, they should sell him next summer for just a reasonable fee, because his wages are so high. Like, if I were United, I would sell him next summer and invest that money in, like, an outstanding defense. Like, United should sell Pogba next summer for anything north of 50 mil, really, because his wages really factor into it too. Get a lights-out defensive midfielder, go back for Sancho, and then you've really got something cooking at United. That's quite an exciting 11.
Do you think they could get Dennis Zakaria?
Probably, and he's fantastic.
Yeah, we're heavily linked with Zakaria, but it's also, I think, Liverpool and Bayern are as well. And if those 2 clubs are in the mix, then United are down the pecking order, aren't they? Right, let's wrap up then with a quick personal question. This one from Fielding Rowan. He says, personal, PS5 or Xbox Series X?
Oh, Jesus.
Jalab, what are you taking? What are you picking out? You've already pre-ordered one, didn't you?
I wish I could, mate. I wish I could. No, I think all of us probably say PS5. I've been a PlayStation boy since birth. Never owned an Xbox. Since birth, yeah, it was in my hands. But if anyone out there can get me a pre-order link, I will be very great. Any of us will be very grateful, because they're impossible to get. Anytime it comes out, they're gone. I'm gonna have to be like one of those guys
when it comes out.
Well, this is it. I'm gonna have to be like one of those guys that like sit outside there at midnight and be like, "Oh, can I buy one, please?"
But
and they're like, "Oh."
Can you not just wait 2 or 3 days? Can you not just wait 2 or 3 days and buy it?
You could, but I'm also impatient. So,
Pat, what are you getting? A PS5?
Yeah, I can count the number of times I've played on an Xbox on the fingers of one hand in my life. Like, I don't think I'll buy it though. It's obscenely expensive, but I've got a friend who works for PlayStation, so I'll say PlayStation.
Yeah, I think PlayStation as well, but like it is so expensive, man. And I'm not gonna lie, I very rarely play PlayStation.
350 is not too bad, I thought, for a brand new console.
I don't play it that often though. Like unless I'm
playing,
that
is true. It depends how.
I probably play it like 2 times, 3 times a week. So I don't know. Is it worth it? I don't know. But yeah, I'll be getting a PS5, not an Xbox Series X. Right, that's it for today's episode of Sunday Vibes. Anyway, Pat, podcast this week.
Yeah, the podcast this week was me and George Wright talking about the Arsenal, and George was quite optimistic. I was not really.
Of course he was.
But you know, the most important thing is to go and follow me on Instagram at PatrickBVS, because like I've been stuck on 6,500 followers for about a year, and I'm not gonna post about football. I'll be honest, but these thirst traps aren't gonna like themselves.
Yeah, exactly. There you go. So go and follow Pato, and go and follow Jalab as well. Anything to push to, Jalab?
Why don't you check us out on Snapchat? Make sure you go over there, just type in Football Daily, and we bring you daily stories.
Yeah, thanks very much for watching, guys. See you later. Bye.